Hello and welcome to another edition of Debatable here on godsgeek.com. My name is Colm and this past week has been very exciting, hasn't it, boys and girls? It has. It's a rhetorical question because Jonathan Blow released the long-awaited, much-anticipated The Witness. But it got me thinking. I mean, The Witness. Is it an indie game? Dictionary.com defines the term indie as an independently or privately owned business, especially a film or music company that is not affiliated with a larger and more commercial company. When it comes to the latter, a DIY mentality has always been prevalent, as countless vans of men and women travel around the globe trying to earn a few pounds, get a bit of notoriety, and attempt to perfect the art of falling asleep on a Marshall stack. I mean, that's independent music, isn't it? In the mid to late 80s, three men, Mike, Matt and Pete, or Stock Aitken and Waterman as they're better known, produced #1 hits from the likes of Kylie Minogue, Jason Donovan, Sonia and Rick Astley on Waterman's label PWL. A lot of tracks that were penned by the trio ended up near the top end of the indie charts because of PWL's status as an indie studio. That's independent music, isn't it? In music, the term has been muddied so much that it's devoid of meaning really now and has been just relegated to being a catch-all genre. Just go into your local record store and flick through a few CDs if they're still there and you'll probably find The Killers or The Strokes. Probably even fucking Razorlight. In 2012, James Swirsky and Lisanne Pajot released their documentary Indie Game The Movie. The film follows three independent developers that are reflecting, releasing or working on their titles. At the very beginning, creator of Braid, Jonathan Blow, explains how an indie game is a personal project rather than a glossy product from a AAA studio. Killscreen's Chris Dallin gives a more cut and dry summary of this sect of video games by saying, quote, "Independent games are any game that a small team or an individual creator worked on to their own vision." Obviously enough, we can date independent games back decades when they were being distributed via shareware on the PC. People would code in their bedroom and then release these products to the general public, more often than not for free. The last console generation made it possible for small teams of developers to earn a bit of cash with the advent of digital distribution. Steam, Xbox Live Arcade, the PlayStation Network, WiiWare even, the iOS App Store, they all contributed to Castle Crashers, World of Goo, Angry Birds and Braid becoming huge successes and earning a lot of money for the people involved. That last one, Braid, whilst being Soulja Boy's favourite game of all time, is also credited with kind of ushering in this new era of independent video games. Released on August 6th, 2008, Braid was the brainchild of Jonathan Blow, a man that put $200,000 of his own money into the game and subsequently found himself 40 grand in debt. It garnered critical acclaim, was a commercial success. Blow was essentially a made man, and indie games were on the map. The follow-up to Braid has now come in the form of The Witness, a wandering affair where you go around solving puzzles and apparently marvelling at how incredible it all is. I'm not being a dick, I just haven't played it, so I'm essentially kind of going off of the opinion of the populace. Obviously, it's difficult to tell how this one is going to do with regards to sales, as it's been out for less than a week, but the critical reception has once again been full of praise of what Blow has achieved. As the man behind The Witness recently told Simon Parkin in a piece for The New Yorker, this $6 million game had an initial budget of $800,000. While Braid was predominantly a solo project for Blow, with art by David Wellman, The Witness has proven to be a much larger affair. But even with the $6 million, the colleagues, the office space, The Witness is an indie game. I think, anyway. I'm not... Like music before it, the term indie has transformed into something where lines are blurred now when it comes to video games. Braid was the premier force in defining this new genre of indie. Journey is an indie game, Gone Home is an indie game, Papers, Please is an indie game. It's a strange qualifier, really. Indie's become a genre in the same way as puzzle, adventure, or shooter. People refer to more deep and meaningful experiences as indie, regardless of whether they are in fact developed by an independent studio. To go back a few steps, Journey. That's a game that people think of as indie because of its presentation, its art style, and its message. But Journey was the third effort in the 3-game deal the developer that game company had signed with Sony, including Flow and Flower. They were just out of third level education and given some cash to get their startup off the ground, as well as some space in Sony's offices in LA. Does that really make any of that game company's back catalogue indie as such? So if we are to think of indie games as titles which are solely funded by the developer without any investor or publisher on board, where does that leave the likes of Devolver Digital, the independent publisher? Speaking with Polygon in April 2014, Devolver's Nigel Lowry mentioned Vlambeer and their upcoming game at the time, Luftrausers. He said, and I quote, "Vlambeer does not need us to publish Luftrausers by any means. That's coming to PC and PlayStation. They've prepared games for both. They're very well known, they're very active, they're very good at what they do. They're with us because we free them up to work." Lowry goes on to outline the independent publisher as someone who can get on with the businessy stuff while the creative types be creative. In some cases, these smaller publishers won't fund the development of games like your Sonys or your Microsofts, but they will get your product on these consoles, and then you share the profits at the end of the day, all going to plan. The Witness is self-published by Thekla, so if a developer has help from an outside source, even if it is an independent publisher, is the game really indie? I think I have it now. So an independent video game is one that comes from the mind, body and soul of a small team of really passionate men and women. One that is funded and created by the one entity, yeah? Like The Walking Dead from Telltale Games, a developer that has 240 people on its books as of January 2015. Portal 2 from Valve, a company worth around $2.5 billion and with an employee count of somewhere around 350-ish. It's an indie game, isn't it? Epic Games might have a few hundred under their roof, be worth a nice few pound and have developed games for Microsoft, but they are still independent. Unreal, Fortnite and Shadow Complex were all published and developed by the company along with subsidiaries. It's complicated. Papers, Please's Lucas Pope previously told Killscreen that the distinction between AAA and indie is a little redundant. Indie, weirdly, has become a sort of derogatory term that internet commenters use to belittle a game. And likewise, if a dour-looking shooter comes up, you'll get people on the other side of the fence using AAA in the same manner.
We're all human though. I've judged games with a certain aesthetic and have probably used indie looking as a derogatory term,
while also criticising a post-apocalyptic shooter for having more brown than a toilet seat. I know in the past I've also used indie game as to define a genre rather than use an applicable word such as platformer, first-person shooter or puzzle game. I've tried to eradicate that word out of my vocabulary over time because, let's fucking be fair, what does it really mean? We're fastly going the way music has and turning it into a genre and lumping things like the Stanley Parable and Super Meat Boy together when they couldn't be further apart. How indie are the Killers? Really? They're signed to the same fucking label as KSI. And that just about does it for this week's episode of Debatable. I'll be back in 2 weeks' time talking about another hot topic in video games. What'll it be? It's God, who knows? It'll be great, hopefully. But if you enjoyed this video, and if you enjoy all the videos on godisgeek.com's YouTube page, head to patreon.com/godisgeek and give us a couple of bucks if you can spare it. We would genuinely appreciate it. Now, as I said, I do hope you enjoyed this episode. A bit of an interesting one, I thought, to kind of delve in, see exactly what an indie game is. I'm not sure if we came up with an answer, but I do hope you enjoyed it. Now, before you head into the comment section and ridicule me so very much, just remember, okay, that everything you saw on this show and past shows and future shows, well, look, it's just my opinion and my opinion alone. And as always, dear friends, it's debatable.
I'm not asking a lot, it's just if I could just win the lottery or something, you know, and I'd just live happier. And the thing is,
Should have packed the God is a Geek Patreon.